Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Those of you joining online, those of you physically present, honor and a joy to be with all of you. A real gift to be here at the Center for Contemplative Research and see the manifestation of the efforts of so many people that bring this place to life and encourage this path of compassion and kindness that we all get to cultivate. It's really quite a gift. Those of you online, welcome. What I'd like to do is just take a moment to have everyone set their motivation, whatever your spiritual tradition, pathway, be it a human being just wanting a better life all the way to the various traditions. It's so valuable to not only know what we're doing, but why we're doing it, have an intention around that. So let's just take a moment within your own lineage, spiritual tradition, or belief system. Or taking the time to be here, let's set a good motivation for this opportunity. Okay, well, for those of you who may not have attended a Ghatika before, Ghatika is a time measurement of 24 minutes. And so we usually begin with a 24-minute meditation. And so let's start there. Invite everybody to get comfortable. Good, nice, straight back, good posture. And I'll hit the timer. And as the bell fades, and as we prepare to engage in meditation, each meditation has its own origins, its own process. Each meditation designed as an antidote to a specific mental, emotional condition. It's valuable to take a moment to be clear about the meditation you're about to engage in and why you would engage in it, whether it's worth your time or not. This specific short practice will be a shamatha practice, calm abiding. It's the antidote to an obsessive, compulsive, busy mind. And if practiced regularly, consistently, over time, one develops the capacity to not be a prisoner of every thought, worry, impulse, or desire that arises. It allows for the opportunity for choice, even the ability to choose one thought over another. Provides a stability of mind, which empowers one to have some free will in your own life, to engage in your life with more clarity and stability. So if that sounds helpful, I invite you to join me in this brief practice. And we can begin by simply taking a little time to ground, to become aware of the body's contact, wherever it's making contact, the sensations of contact. floor, cushion, chair. Maybe your hands or arms are making contact with the body. Simply becoming aware of that contact. And then let your awareness just descend and settle into these areas of contact, resting your awareness there. Very much like clouds just descending into a mountain valley and resting there. Let your awareness just come to rest in the solidity of your body, taking a little time to ground. Now, having grounded, let's just take a couple of minutes to check in with our bodies and relax and release any tension that we might be carrying. It's amazing how often we have tightness and tension that we're even unaware of. So let's just take a little time to check in, just a couple of minutes at your own pace. Method I like to use is simply bringing the awareness to the top of the head, right up to the crown, and just gently guiding the awareness down through the body, imagining the awareness as a soothing balm that melts away any tension, any tightness it finds along the way. As it moves down, relaxing, releasing tension in the forehead. Let it be open, spacious, softening the facial muscles, the neck, shoulders, and so forth, all the way down to the feet. So let's just take a couple of minutes at your own pace, just guiding your awareness through the body, checking in, and releasing any tension, any tightness you find along the way. Now, having taken some time to ground, to relax, let's now focus our attention. And I invite you to shift your awareness to the breath and let the breath now become the object of your meditation, the anchor for your attention. Allow the breath to be natural, unmodified, no need to interfere. Body knows how to breathe. Just be an observer, a witness, attending to the sensations of the breath as it enters and exits your body. Each breath a new moment, each breath a new opportunity to be present. And if you notice your mind wander, no problem. That's exactly why we meditate. Just relax, release the thoughts, and return to the breath. That's the practice. when you're ready, I invite you to bring your awareness forward. No hurries, no worries. Nice to transition smoothly, gently. All right. So, I read the description of the topic today, and it's rather ambitious. What was I thinking? Last month, we had a really rich discussion on equanimity, this mind of balance that we can cultivate over time and bring into our activities, bring into our experiences, and not get hooked so easily into attachment and aversion and exaggeration. Needless to say, this takes some time, and it's born of wisdom. It's born of these three wisdoms: the wisdom of hearing a teaching, the wisdom of analyzing a teaching, and resting that realization into some deepening familiarization, often through meditation, that we kind of observe. We get a teaching, we try it out, we bring it into our life, we kind of notice, this didn't bring me the happiness I thought it would, or the happiness I experienced was just kind of temporary, came and it went. It's amazing how much we forget the lessons we've learned because the mind's just on to the next thing. And so slowing that process down and observing, what it is that I'm so caught up in, attached to, or afraid of. And if we slow that process down, we might notice that you've actually survived every single worry and fear you've ever had in your life. And here we are. And yet we can forget that so easily when we're caught up in a new fear or a new worry. That we've experienced millions of them. They've all come and gone. We're still here. But unless we take time to slow that process down, to recognize, what were the impulses and desires that made that so important in the moment. We just keep getting caught up in those moments. What if this doesn't happen? What if this does happen? Boy, I'd really like that to happen. And it happens. And then it's next Tuesday. And here I am caught up in the same worry or fear, another one similar. And I forget that my whole life has been a process of chasing something to be okay, avoiding something to be okay. And I may have never realized maybe I'm already okay. And that this is a lot of mental activity that is seeking something in people, places, and things that it cannot provide. But what's really important is how I engage with those experiences, and that what I'm bringing to these moments has much more meaning and purpose. And so equanimity is that capacity to stay a little more centered as we find ourselves going towards some attachments and appreciation, or some worries and some fears and some aversions. The analogy I used last month was kind of being on a teeter-totter. I don't want to be on the end, getting in, but I want to be kind of in the middle with my leg going, a little bit this way, a little bit that way. This sounds interesting, maybe I'll do that. This sounds kind of terrible, I'll try to avoid that, but it's more balanced. I don't get as thrown off. I just get a little bit, engaged in this human experience, and with that balance of equanimity to have the emotions not dictate my actions, but rather inform them. And that's incredible, to be informed by my thoughts and emotions instead of be the thoughts and emotions, compelled to act upon them. In there's this little space that we might have something called free will, some opportunity for choice. And so I think we had a pretty good opportunity last month to explore that. And at the end of the conversation, it was, okay, well, how come we can have this knowledge and then not act upon it? Which is the real rub, Knowing better is not doing better. And the way I change my life is not by knowing things. I can't think myself into right living. I need to live myself into right thinking. Right? I need to conjoin this wisdom, this knowledge, this equanimity with activities that I can actually engage in. I don't know about you, but I can be pretty spiritual at 8 a.m. and not at all spiritual at 10 a.m. Could be 8:30 too, you know? And one of the big, just eye-opening revelations, I'll never forget, I don't know, maybe I will forget. Because that's the problem, we forget. And that's the lesson, actually. I currently remember vividly the moment I was listening to a teaching by Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo. And she just said, our whole problem is we forget. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole problem right there. I forget. It just hit to the core. My problem is I forget. All throughout the day I'm forgetting. And this path of wisdom and understanding is, how do we maintain mindfulness? How do we remember the lessons? How do we incorporate them in a way that is a sustainable way of being, instead of an interesting philosophical conversation we just had? Interesting philosophical conversations have never changed my life. They're entertaining, though. What changes my life is integrating those conversations, exploring them, and as the Buddha would emphasize, challenging them, questioning them, and then testing them. How do I test this in my life? And therein lies this opportunity to have this union. And I think this is, we often talk in Buddhism about the union of shamatha and vipassana, this calm, abided mind with the analytical nature of exploring the nature of how we exist and the lessons we can learn. There's this union that can take place, and that was the Buddha's big revelation, is that union that provided awakening. Well, in a practical sense, what I've noticed is a union that for me needs to take place between my unconscious conventional mind and my conscious conventional mind. So my conscious conventional mind is one that, can sit here and have a conversation with you and kind of explore things. And, oh yeah, I get equanimity. That sounds wonderful. And I understand, well, in order to have a calm mind, I need to meditate and develop that calm mind. That's all good. I get that conventional mind. I understand that. And then I, wake up and my unconscious conventional mind's like, we're not meditating, dude. There's some stuff to do. And there's resistance. And so therein lies this incredible challenge of a human condition of, why would I resist the very things I know improve the quality of my life? Why would I resist virtue if I know that virtue is the source of all lasting happiness and well-being, foundation of all spiritual, mental, emotional growth? And then the mind-body says, yeah, but screw that guy. Or look at that idiot. Or whatever comes up. And I forget. And I forget, oh, okay. Because this unconscious mind and body experience is well-trained, well-conditioned. It knows how to feel good. It knows what it's averse to. It has never forgotten any of the experiences. It knows when I was reprimanded when I was a little kid that I don't even remember. It knows who would harm me, what felt difficult. It knows what gave me joy. It probably remembers the Gerber type of baby food that really brought me some delight, that I can't recall. But boy, that smell probably would say, oh yeah, it's that peaches, man. That was the stuff. Not those peas. That wasn't. And so this conditioning that is ever present in my unconscious conventional mind is strong, knowing. It has the effect with the biology and the neural pathways that give reward and so forth, and the experience and the sensations that show up in the body. And so on one level I have this unconscious mind body that knows, remembers, understands how to feel good and how to, what makes it feel bad. And there's this full bandwidth of spectrum. And left to its own devices, it wants to feel good, it wants to avoid pain, and it knows how to do that on a very sensation type level. What it doesn't know is a deeper reflective, delayed gratification conscious level of mind that I get to bring into decision making, right? Some call it executive function, the aspect to weigh something and go, yeah, that would feel good now, but it will actually undermine what I want to accomplish. Delayed gratification. We try to teach to our kids. I don't particularly want to learn it. I'd just rather teach it to them. And so the union that I speak of is a union between the knowing and this unconscious conditioned body coming together. That we get to train these unconditioned, it is conditioned, the unconscious conditioned mind. Need to use the words properly. Where it starts to recognize, wow, this activity will bring what I'm seeking. And it remembers that I need to associate my effort with the reward of a lasting reward, not a temporary, momentary pleasure. It knows how to do that. And so over time, as we engage in practices that would sustain mindfulness, effort that will produce the result that we would like, which takes time and effort, that we associate those efforts with the benefits that will come along with it, some reward. And it's so easy to sit there and think, well, especially, it comes up in our conversations here a lot, attaining enlightenment, 3 eons of work, having compassion for all sentient beings, big task. I'm still trying to be nice to my neighbor, and sit there in these big tasks that we're seeking to achieve can seem so far away that it can be not very tangible in my daily life, not very tangible at all. It just seems, I get that the Dalai Lama can do that, but I'm not the Dalai Lama. And so the mind doesn't recognize, I say words or I have aspirations to be a certain way, to aspire to something. And it could just be to live a meaningful life, without all the mental, emotional afflictions. Could be all the way up to achieving enlightenment for the welfare of all beings. Big task. But throughout my day, this mind and body, is it really going to associate to whatever I'm doing is going to get me this big goal, which is very far away, kind of inconceivable in many ways. As a matter of fact, it's beyond concept, so I guess it would be inconceivable. And And then, the mind and body gets in the way of that. And, well, yeah, okay, we can go do our spiritual practice and then get caught up in worldly concerns. And so it's not capable of this first off, even recognizing the potential. And so often our conditioning just gets in the way of, I can feel good right now, and I can engage in practices that I find rewarding now. And, is that effort really worth it? And so in order to bring union here, union within my aspirations or what I've been taught or what I believe or what I actually deeply know, into an awareness with my mind-body experience, I need to link my activities to the benefit that aligns with my own become an active participant in my becoming. So it's like I've got a roadmap, and we get to follow the directions, but it's a big journey. And unless I stop at the rest stops and nourish myself along the way, I'm not going to have the fuel to get there. The nurturing and the fuel. And so often there's this big struggle between what this conditioned mind-body experience. It's kind of the way I think of this unconscious, subconscious, wired, and what my more conscious awareness can bring to mind is to start teaching the map and the path, and then it discovers the reward. So, for example, we just meditated. Right? We just meditated. Now, normally in my meditation at the end, I thought about doing it with all of you, but then I didn't. So, at the end, I just go, was that worth my time? I just meditated. Is that valuable? Is it worth my time? How does that contribute to life I want to live? And I take a little time and I go, it was worth my time. And it's helping me consciously engage in activities that support mental stability and the ability to have choice in my life. And I take a moment and I attach the reward of that practice to the person I want to become, the way I'd like to live. And so it becomes, the mind-body starts running. When I sit, you notice at the start, I was, why are we meditating? What I'm doing and why I'm doing it. This specific practice, if done consistently, allows that capacity for choice, for the capacity to not be a prisoner of thoughts, worries, fears, concerns, impulses, desires. If done over time, consistently, one develops the capacity to experience emotions instead of be the emotions. So I think it's worth my time. So I'm bringing the conscious with the activity. And then at the end of the activity, often in our lineage we'll dedicate the merit, but we might forget to recognize the value of the practice. Oh, right. Was this worth my time? What's it benefit? How's it helpful? And then the subconscious mind starts having a reward associated with a behavior, an activity. And it starts going, oh yeah, right on, John. Nailed it, dude. Even though your mind was planning the whole talk while you're trying to meditate, it was still probably worth your time. And by the way, whatever I'm going to say wasn't any part of my previous arrangement of thought process. Yeah. So it's worth the time. And then there becomes a union over time where as the mind-body starts associating the benefits and reward of effortful behaviors, then the effortful behaviors require less effort, right? The mind-body wants to do these things. it's real clear that when you want to do something, effort is no problem. Right? I often go back to Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo again when they said living, over 12 years in a cave must have been difficult. She said, not really, it's what I wanted to do. I was interested in it. It was important to me. So it wasn't very difficult. And I've noticed in my life, the things I want to do, I'll put effort into. I'll put a lot of effort into it. And, often, I think I brought up last week, I used to play basketball. That's an effortful game. You run up and down, you got a lot of physical effort, but it was fun. I played that for hours. But have me write a term paper? Oh man, that's hard. It requires very little physical effort, and I actually knew what I wanted to say. And by the way, typing's not usually very hard either. And so what's hard is the resistance to it, right? I didn't want to do it. I wasn't that interested in doing it. I was interested in the reward of a grade, but not that. And some people are very interested in term papers, and they want to do that. I have a friend of mine who will spend 6 hours a day reading medical journals. That's his thing, not mine. And so when we find things interesting, they become much more effortless. We're engaged, no problem. So linking the benefit of the activities we do as quickly as possible starts training the unconscious mind-body experience. It starts to learn, oh yeah, this is good, this is meaningful. And we have more union between those wisdom and the activities that support the wisdom, the virtue and so forth. But if I'm constantly comparing where I am with, the Dalai Lama, I'm probably not going to get very far. So, did I engage in a practice, and was this practice beneficial? And then we're getting somewhere. And so, modern research on motivation indicates there's real clarity around when we get something new and interesting, a big motivation, we're very interested. We're highly motivated. I'm going to do this. And, some people with their first spiritual teachings, highly motivated, I'm all in. And then you start doing it. It's very interesting. Then it becomes very monotonous and routine. And then we get, our motivation goes down. And so the analogy they'll use I'll use a college one. Taking a course, I'm getting a degree, highly motivated, want this degree. Now I have to go to school and I have to study and this kind of thing, and my motivation goes down. But the end of the year is coming up and grades are coming and the test, and I'm motivated again. I'm closer to the goal. So initial motivation high, middle motivation low, towards the end, very high again. And so if you think about that in terms of a path of spiritual attainments and a lifetime of practice, there's a whole lot of middle there. and it's hard to stay, consciously motivated on a deeper level for that. And so what they do is they break it down into components and parts and pieces. And so we have a path. And so the great, wonderful methods that have been taught within the mind training, the Lojong practices, is a synthesis of practice for a single lifetime. A synthesis of practice for a single lifetime, 5 powers. And it starts with a real simple thing. Instead of achieving enlightenment for all sentient beings, or however many eons that may take, here's a day that's going to come only once in your life, and it's called today. And it is filled with the treasure, the essence of this life, of merit and wisdom, from a bodhisattva point of view, the 2 accumulations of full Buddhahood. This day is filled with that treasure. This day is. Not eons from now. This day is filled with the opportunity to accumulate merit and wisdom. Now, if I'm not a Buddhist, I'm a regular human being who wants to live a human life with less suffering and more joy, resilience, and balance, guess what? Virtue and wisdom will help you do that. And your whole day is filled with opportunities to engage in virtue, connection, compassion, and more wisdom, hopefully. And that more wisdom is not, it's really not that elusive, right? If you understand you're interdependent, that's a deep philosophical conversation. I'm interdependent. But everybody can get that, right? Everybody can get that intellectually. Is there anything independent about you? And if so, please let me know. I've been searching for a few decades. But I haven't found anything independent about me. Just haven't. Right? Even the words I'm using, of course, were taught to me. Language was taught to me. Everything I know was taught to me. My body was given to me by my parents and their parents and their grandparents. Like, there's nothing me and mine in here, right? That's independent. And so philosophically, intellectually, scientifically, yeah, we're interdependent. But that's not how it feels. Especially when you take my last piece of cherry pie. And there's a me and a you. It's, pretty independent. And so we forget, right? We forget. And so we have this nice, deep philosophical conversation, and we forget. But if I learn how to remember, and these 5 powers have this opportunity, it starts with resolve, okay? You wake up in the morning and you resolve. And you resolve to live in a particular way. And here's a day that's coming only once in your life, and you don't know if you'll have another one. This is it. It's filled with the opportunity to live a life that's meaningful and purposeful, with merit and with wisdom. We can resolve to live this day, cultivating merit and wisdom, to live a life that I find meaningful. I could resolve to try to remember interdependence. I can resolve to recognize that everyone I meet is offering me an opportunity to improve myself and the world I live in. I can resolve, have a clear intention. From a Mahayana Buddhist point of view, the resolve is to maintain that bodhicitta throughout the day and to not give it up, to remember. And so this resolve that we can start our day with, whichever your spiritual tradition, you're resolving to engage in one day. Not 3 eons, one day. To improve and set that clearly. To remember. Maybe I like to resolve to try to live in reality. I find that's often helpful and easy to forget. So the reality of being interdependent and that my life is unfolding and how I experience you is subjective, based on what I'm bringing to the experience, and that all of you are offering me an opportunity to understand myself and to be of benefit to others. That's the thing to remember. Reality. Easy to forget if you mess with my cherry pie. So lately I've been into chocolate silk pie. That cream-filled stuff. Yeah. Okay, so back to the teaching. What were we talking about? Pie? No, right. Reality and resolve, but you can see how quickly we can divert as desires and impulses come up during the day, and feelings and sensations in the body. And so this resolve every day is to go, okay, I'm going to take some time to resolve, set my intention to really remember reality and the opportunity of this day, and to set a clear intention. The next power is familiarity. Familiarity. Now this is the wisdom piece. Familiarity, to become familiar with Gom, to become familiar with the mind, the activities, the familiarity with the lessons I'm learning. So becoming familiar with, I need to have some structure to repeat. to really support the life I want to live, the things that I've learned. And so familiarity is the key piece of transforming our lives, to becoming familiar with the habits and tendencies that take me away, the habits and tendencies that support this path, the familiarity with the lessons learned and how to nurture the three wisdoms in my life. And so that familiarity can start with a structured setting where there's certain practices I do each day. There's a certain text maybe I'm learning and I'm trying to apply three wisdoms, read it, reflect upon it, meditate upon it, really to deepen the opportunity to understand and to bring a freshness to it. And so what is that way that I have structured my day and my life that's really going to support the familiarity of the practices that I want to know deeply, so I can train this mind-body to recognize? That's where that takes place, is in that familiarity. And so every day, really having an opportunity. What is it I'm really becoming familiar with? What is this? Maybe my whole day is recognizing patience, noticing the mind when it gets impatient and the attachments to people being a certain way or not. Becoming familiar with my impatience and the quality of patience. What is it I'm working on? Familiarity is interesting because it requires repetitiveness, right? In order to know something, we really need to bring it to mind deeply. But the mind's seeking novelty. Yeah. I remember, somebody, what's the teaching you're going to do? They're going to do the Four Noble Truths. I know that. Really? Do you? And why are you in samsara? I'm like, I'm interested in the Four Noble Truths, because, I'm often spending my time decorating samsara instead of removing myself from it. And maybe if I understood the Four Noble Truths, I'd stop doing that. I can quote some words, but do I know? The whole path of liberation is right there. Maybe I should read it again. Maybe I should understand some of these points. Yeah. And so familiarity is bringing a freshness to that repetitive things. We just did a brief shamatha practice, and people, really? Meditate on the breath again? Oh man, that's so introductory. Yeah, a lot of people over the years, really, you're doing mindfulness of breath, and I want to do this practice or that practice. And I'm like, well, have you been able to stay on the breath for the whole practice? No. Maybe you want to just do that first, before I move on. And do these sublime practices. So the mind, the body things seeking novelty, but familiarity brings the novelty to the practice. When we link it to the benefit, the growth, the capacity for patience, for recognition, for value in what I am doing, and bringing those lessons into the actual mental and physical activities that support that growth. So real key to take a practice and spend time with it there. Spend time with it there. And then the third one is, we call this white seed, but it's cultivating merit. That all day long I can be cultivating merit. I can be helping others. I can be transforming my mind with the low jump practice of recognizing that these adversities that show up are opportunities to be helpful, to learn, to grow, to improve, to be helpful, to be kind. It's the fertilizer of all spiritual growth, engaged in merit and virtue and the source of all happiness. And so all day long, creating the conditions from which wisdom can arise, because without the merit, the wisdom is like pouring water on a rock. It's there's no fertilizer, there's no soil. And so all day long, the opportunity to engage in the most important practice. I was talking to Aaron yesterday. There's a documentary I watched. They were following a nun, a Tibetan nun, who's walking through Tibet, sort of walking meditation, going to all the sacred spots. And she goes to spend some time with this yogi. She finds this well-known yogi. He lives by himself. He's just this wild yogi. And she has a session with him, and she asked him to give a teaching. And he's you just see his eyes. He's just clear. He's quiet. And he says, "Well, Anila, as I know really all there is to teach is to treat all other beings as your own children, to love them like that. And other than that, I don't have much to teach." He was done. But you could tell he knew this, right? And it's just so clear, that's it, And then she's sitting there, and they got a camera crew on. She's like, "Well, could you tell a little more?" And what strikes me, and Contemplative Rinpoche talks about this too, is that's what we need to do. And all these other teachings and practices are because I can't do that. Right? Yeah, Contemplative Rinpoche, it's a great talk I saw once, and she says, we have all these teaching and practices because we can't love each other. If you love each other, I wouldn't have to do all this stuff. And because I can't love each other, then I have to learn how to do this practice so I can learn how to do that. And then because I can't do that, I need to learn this practice. And then because I can't, and then I have those. Now we have all this breadth of practice and teaching just because basically I can't treat all living beings as my own dear loving children. I don't understand our interdependence, and I don't recognize that you're giving life to me. And so we have all these practices to just do this one thing. Because we have all these afflictions and self-centeredness and self-grasping. And so, all day long, positive seeds we can be cultivating, giving rise to others, helping, being of benefit, recognizing their value, learning how to love each other in healthy and meaningful ways all day long. So that becomes a fertilizer that gives rise to the capacity to realize the teachings and the wisdom that we have. I remember going to my teachings with my teacher Geshe, Sultan Yeltsin, so long ago, and he's giving, Tibetan Lama, and it's very ornate and everything, and I'm just this Westerner sitting in there going, man, this is pretty elaborate. And then, he's giving these teachings, and I'm like, man, this stuff's so over my head. I'm never going to get any of this stuff. Non-dual awareness. What do you mean? There's me and there's you. There's, I guess is, wow, way beyond me. But what I recognized was I could be a better person. I could be a better person. Let me just focus on ethics. I'll work on that. I could use some help there, really badly. And you could see his love. Like he did treat everyone as a living child. And I just thought, I'll forget all that emptiness stuff. I'm just going to work on being a better human being, and that's what I did. And then, what would happen over a couple of decades is, by focusing on ethics and virtue, what I would discover later is that things that made no sense to me previously, I know today on a whole nother level. Not that I know much, but what I didn't know, I could understand in a new way. And the words didn't change. The words didn't change. My mind changed. The fertilizer of merit, of ethics, give rise to that understanding. And so we've got, the resolve first thing in the morning, 4 thoughts that turn the mind, and being clear, we've got this day. So it's about this day. What can I do with this day? It comes only once. There may not be another. The familiarity, developing a routine and rituals of practice to deeply engage in very specific practices instead of being willy-nilly about this book and that practice and that text. And we don't want to be all willy-nilly. We want to develop deeply the opportunity to access the teaching. So really spending time. I once spent a whole weekend on the 2 verses of Lama Tsongkhapa. And I spend time on it every day now, and have been for decades. And I still don't think I know them. But boy, they inform my life today. And so deeply with familiar. And then to engage in that day as mindfully as possible, dedicating every opportunity you can to virtue, to merit. And then the 4th one, there's a few words for it. Lama Allen's first book on 7-point mind train used the word abhorrence, developing abhorrence. I like that one. Most people are bored to that thought. But it's, Jetsuba Tenzin Palmo in her most current book uses the word revulsion. Lama Allen in a later book uses a nicer word, which is not coming to mind at the moment. But the idea is to really develop a visceral abhorrence to non-virtue. That these things are poison to my life. These are undermining my life. And to really deeply get that capacity, and this is where renunciation really falls in, right? Renunciation. I'm renouncing delusion. I'm renouncing the things that actually undermine the life I want to live, and I'm seeing very clearly how it harms me and others. And so, 4 opponent powers, purification practice, very good with that. But to really, take, and what I do here is I take my biggest issue, right? And I make that my practice. And, because, there's a lot of them. So I just take the biggest one. And I notice throughout the day where it arises, how it undermines my thing. I take it into my evening purification practice of 4 opponent powers. And intelligent regret. I see where this undermines the very life I want to live, how it poisons my capacity to engage in the activities that really support the person I want to become, the path I'm on. And so this 4th power of revulsion or abhorrence, it's really describing renunciation, ultimately. But the reason they use those words is that you'll notice that when that desire, that impulse arises, your body can actually contract and go, I don't want that. Where the mind, there might be an impulse for this, but I don't want that now. And, it's kind of like, a simple analogy for me is smoking. I quit smoking when I was 25. And, and there's a compulsion, right, to do that. I mean, didn't know how not to smoke, right? It's very addicted with the body and all that. And it was very difficult, right? But I saw, you watch a few films on what it does to your lungs and do all that. And intellectually, I could know that smoking was bad. By the way, that did not have me cause to quit smoking. But I'll tell you what, seeing a friend of mine who's dying of lung cancer have a hole in his thing and smoking a cigarette, dude, that got my attention, right? That got my attention. But you know what really got my attention in the end was how much it was robbing me of my life in terms of I needed to go outside to smoke. I couldn't smoke here. Price of cigarettes are going. Like I started to see all the inconvenience of my life that I was giving up to smoking and that wisdom. And then I realized, if I wanted any free will in my life, I needed to give that up. So at 25, on my 25th birthday, I quit. Yeah. I always vowed if I was still smoking when I was 25, I'd quit. And it was not easy. My big success was if I saw someone smoking and I didn't have the urge to dive across the table, knock them to the floor, rip the cigarette out of their mouth and suck it down. I thought that was a good progress. Sometimes I didn't have that impulse. And now today, it's visceral. I wouldn't want to be smoking at all, right? You have that. You see it over time. So over time, bringing to mind how these activities, now I have very more subtle attachments and sensations that take me from my practice. And so I just take the biggest one and then I work on that and I bring to mind intelligent regret and I apply it to my purification and then I notice it during the day and I work on it and over time it reduces. And then what I've noticed when I'm working on the biggest, it actually takes care of a lot of the littler ones. They start to resolve on their own, which is good because 84,000 is a lot, and I only have this life in this day, so a lot of afflictions. And so just taking the biggest one, working on that. And so you can see this path, right? Resolve, really setting your day up with clear intention on how you want to live, familiarity, having practices to move deeply that will help you be the person you want to be, bringing that awareness into your activities all day long, cultivating merit and virtue and qualities of being of benefit to others, getting out of self-centeredness. And then really developing a wisdom around the unhealthy activities that undermine your practice. And the last of the 5 powers, it's interesting, in Jetsuma Tenzo Palm's book, she used the word aspiration. Sometimes trained with words, sometimes it's prayer. Aspirations. So throughout the day, reminding yourself through prayer, through verses, through mantra, that mind of being of benefit to others, that mind of living in virtue, whatever. Again, I'm coming from a Tibetan Buddhist point of view, so it's bodhicitta that, but any human being can be cultivating and bringing to mind those qualities of kindness, loving kindness, metta practice, prayers and aspirations. May you be well, may you be happy. Just bringing that to mind. And here, I think, is the most undervalued aspect in many people's minds, is we don't recognize that what comes up in the mind is what we feed the mind. All right? These thoughts that come up, those dreams, those impulses, those desires, well, they can come from nowhere. I've been feeding my mind, And so all day long, if I'm feeding it loving kindness, compassion, aspirations about being helpful, being kind, if I'm bringing to mind gratitude and appreciation, well, that's what I get to nurture the mind with, and that's what naturally pops up more, because what we water grows. So what are the thoughts? What am I feeding my mind? So all day long, I can be bringing the health food of kindness and compassion and generosity instead of the junk food of selfishness and desire and, resentment. I've done enough of that. It's so taking time throughout the day, all day long, to stop and bring to mind. The word mantra is actually mind protection. You're protecting your mind from non-virtue. So as you say mantra, it's mind protection. You're engaging the mind with virtue and aspiration all day long to have that opportunity. So I found in my life that these 5 powers are just this incredible Lojong teaching on how any human being of whatever spiritual tradition can incorporate the synthesis of practice for a single lifetime into educating the unconscious mind and body consciously through a structure that then the unconscious mind starts. It's not second nature anymore. It becomes our ultimate nature, right? And these habits and conditions start taking on the wiring changes. The physiology of the body changes. The reward system's in place. This is much better than that. And we won't spend as much time devoted to as I was reflecting on the Buddha's life, where, he walked away from, what people would consider a life of luxury and all the needs met, family, everything. Because he said, why would I invest time into something that can't provide lasting happiness? I'd rather spend my time seeking something that can provide what we all seek, and I can bring it back to my family. I can bring it back to the world. A real great gift. And so in my own life, why do I spend time invested in something that is only operating a temporary sensation at the cost of the long-term well-being? Because my mind-body knows I can feel good now. And so this very gradual process, literally one day at a time, has been a method. It's what they use in AA, it's what they use in 12-step programs, it's what they use a day at a time, is that from the time I wake up, can I make today a good day to die? That if I were to go today, it was okay. I used it well. I'm nurturing qualities that are meaningful. And as we get towards the end here, the biggest waste of time is to beat yourself up for wasting time. Right? So not that critical, you didn't do it right, you do this. You want to talk about wasting time, criticize yourself for wasting time. That's a huge waste of time. But when we catch ourselves being critical of ourselves, recognize the opportunity to grow from how I've been wasting my time. That's not how I want to live. Now I have wisdom. That I learn in my life what doesn't work to learn what does work. But beating myself up for learning what doesn't work is not allowing the opportunity to grow and change. And so this real nurturing aspect that we have within, to treat ourselves as the Buddha would treat us, this kindness, the Buddha nature is already there, to help us on a journey of removing the habits and conditioning that are just ill-informed, right? Ill-informed, that's all. Not a bad person. And they're not the foe. The afflictions that show up are actually the path. Now I know what to work on. It's great. Yeah, still have that. Now I know what to work on. It's actually showing up to guide us. And so that's the journey that has helped me in my path to move from learning something to engaging in activities that support. And so I can notice when I'm resisting virtue, which to me is just insane if I say it out loud. And yet I do it, right? This would be the good thing to do. Yeah, but we're doing this. And, but it's not that any of you can relate, but this opportunity to, oh, wow, there's things in my way of misunderstanding. And maybe I can start working on those. But key is linking the reward with the beneficial activities. And I think that's where most people lose the path or lose their momentum, is we might dedicate virtue, but we don't recognize virtue for ourselves. And the more we can link that, the more the subconscious and the wiring in this body starts to be much more motivated in that way. To allow yourself to rejoice in your own virtue, not just the virtue of others, in a way that's healthy and meaningful. And we're so afraid of that, because then we're going to get caught up in ego. Instead of, first off, you're not the one who did it anyway. I mean, you're arising in dependence upon everything else, I do something good, I just recognize my mom taught me that, my teacher taught me that, these people taught me that. I mean, anything you're hearing out of my mouth, came from others, so, but recognize their value and who you're becoming, celebrate that. So, Lord reminded me to try to leave time for any questions or discussions, so good on you. Anybody have any thoughts, curiosities, questions, comments, or corrections? And online, you'll let me know, or
they can just chime in.
They can just chime in. You can just unmute if you're online. Okay, so Carla, are you going to say something? I see you reaching forward.
Oh, I thought I saw a question in the chat, and I was trying to find it.
No worries.
There's a comment in the chat.
Okay.
It's not framed as a question, but I can read it.
Okay.
There's a comment in the chat that's not framed as a question, but maybe it's useful for you to comment on. Susan says, accumulating merit feels transactional, as if I'm seeking a reward for my activities instead of participating in those activities without expectation of reward. My example is repeating a mantra 100,000 times to accumulate triple merit.
Yeah, so if you don't create a cause, you don't get a result. So there is a transaction. If I don't create a cause, I don't get a result. And when we think about the laws of karma, I remember, in my early training, these 4 laws of karma, and one of them is, for every cause there'll be a result. But the next one was, if there's no cause, there's no result. That caught my attention. I was like, oh, I'm always thinking about the other, but what am I doing to actually create the cause of a mind of kindness and compassion? So, yeah, if I don't create a cause, I won't get a result. So it's very helpful to engage in practices that support and create the causes and conditions for a path of a bodhisattva or compassion or a good human being. So that transaction takes place. The distinction being is, am I caught up in an attachment around a specific outcome and not actually the heart of the motivation of the practice of being a benefit to all beings? And am I developing spiritual pride or an attachment to a certain number, or am I actually just wanting to transform my self-centered heart so I can be a benefit to others? So there's very wholesome motivations that are innate in terms of, the Buddha nature of compassion is already there, and a desire to make good use of life. So aspirations and motivation are critical to create the cause for a result that can transform the mind and be of benefit to others. So there's incredible benefit there. But if you're doing it out of a sense of, I want to be a Buddhist teacher or something like that, I almost think, honestly, I'm just going to be honest with you. Anyone who has the desire to be a Buddhist teacher probably should not be a Buddhist teacher. It's just very clear to me. You just watch the mind, Maybe you're here to be helpful. That would be good. And if teaching happens to be a good way to be helpful, then that's good. There's a different mind, right? And there's a different mind that wants to achieve something. There's a different mind that wants to be helpful and kind to all others. Do I want to create the causes so I can love all beings as my dear children? Well, yeah. Then there's certain things to do for that. That's wonderful. If I want, so always watching the attachment around an outcome versus an aspiration and a motivation. But if we sit around just wanting to be in bodhisattva, it's probably not going to work very well.
Thank you, John, so much for the teachings. In our prayers, we ask for the unity of samsara and nirvana, but we have this ego clinging and these habitual tendencies. So can you comment a little about that samsara and our nirvana coming as one?
So within the Buddhist teachings, there is no difference, right? It's no different place. The difference between samsara and nirvana is our minds. I perceive all phenomena either as a more realized being, I recognize nirvana. As a samsaric being, I recognize samsara. So the real gift is to understand that the transformation from samsara to nirvana is a transition of my own mind, to recognize that. It's not a different place. I've just developed, I haven't, by the way. No. One develops the ability to know the truth. And samsara is no longer samsara to you. It's nirvana. It's not a different place. It's a different mind.
There's a hand up in the chat from Roxana.
Okay. Roxana, you got something?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm lowering my hand. My daughter is 44 years old, and she just found out that one of her best friends just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I sent her a note and let her know about my two friends who were diagnosed and they're cancer-free, and my aunt who was diagnosed and lived to be 100. So, and I wrote your idea of how it's something to, an opportunity to work on something. Do you have any other thoughts that I could share with her?
The only thing I would say is to help her be a kind friend to her friend as she goes through it, regardless of whether she lives or doesn't live. It's how do you live while you are alive? So many people worry about dying that they don't live. It robs them of the life they do have while they have it.
Mm-hmm.
So a dear friend of mine, his wife of over 40 years was contracted cancer again, one more time. And she just told him, I'm not going through all that treatment again, I just want to live the last couple, however long, and have us laugh a little bit and do some life. And his worst fear was her dying before him. She was taught him how to be the person he is. He was very attached to her being alive. And we had this conversation, and the commitment was, rather than fearing what it's going to be like when she's gone, don't let it rob you of the life you have with her while you have it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's use the life you do have while you do have it, instead of worrying about what won't be there and having that rob the opportunity and the quality of what you do have. And of course, people take the actions that might turn into remission, but it might not. And remember, we all have a terminal illness. It's called life. And, but don't tell her that. I mean, again, we want, we want to meet people where they're at. And so really honor the challenge and the adversity of facing something that's challenging and difficult to that. And just, being a good supportive friend with her friend and to help her have the quality of life she has while she has it and supporting her in the process. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you so much. If there is a pattern of a lack of equanimity that keeps coming up, sometimes it feels like trying to, I think at the beginning of the talk you said analyze, like what is it that gets triggered. Sometimes I feel like that is not beneficial because it keeps happening. And how much do you think it might, my instinct is that maybe just going right to the cause, which is the idea of having a self, might be a better way to tackle recurring ones instead of fixating on them and trying to take it apart. I think sometimes it feels like it's feeding that pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is one of the things that Westerners get really caught up in. We go to therapy, man. And let me tell you about my issues. And, and let me unpack this and resolve this. And it's interesting that I have a totally non-scientific formula of 80-20. Could be 90-10, depends. And that is about 80 to 90% of these afflictions and habits and conditioning, we don't need therapy for. We just need to stop giving them attention. But there is a certain amount that requires our attention, right? And they really get in the way, and traumas and certain things that will show up that habitually that we do need to attend to as a human. And as Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo points out, we need to have a healthy sense of self to eliminate that self, right? So I need to, as a human, be pretty whole to engage in these teachings. So sometimes there's certain things that come up that are unresolved from a past that, we can give some light to and move on. But we can also just feed something, as you're pointing out. And if I can get to the root cause is self-grasping, right? The root cause. And if I can recognize that what's arising is nothing other than affliction out of self-centeredness and delusion, and let it go, you can do that, you're good, okay? But if you can't do that and it's a pretend thing where I'm stuffing a feeling, then that's unhealthy. The distinction is if you can move on without it giving it that energy, if you can really, that you only throw a stick at a tiger once. You can throw a stick to a dog, he'll chase it all day. You turn around and throw a stick at a tiger, you're only going to do that once. And that is you look deeply at what that is giving rise to and dissolve it, face it head on, then that's quite wonderful. So many of our sort of anxieties and self-grasping, if you have the capacity and a bit of realization around the nature of emptiness and selflessness, you just let go. There's no need to entertain that. But the distinction is whether that's stuffing or what some people call spiritual bypass. I'm just stuffing emotions and not dealing with it versus allow the emotion. That's not who I am. Allow the anxiety. Allow what's arising. That's not who I am. And then act appropriately anyway. Then it's not such a big deal. But it is that challenge that there are some things that could use some help, and other things we just recognize that I'm just giving it more energy. I mean, every time someone identifies with a particular diagnosis, they become that diagnosis. I have an anxiety disorder versus anxiety appears in my life at certain times under certain conditions. And maybe I can work on that instead of I have an anxiety disorder, because there's sometimes I'm not anxious and there's sometimes I am, right? But it's helpful to work on with, a therapist with some anxiety issues, but not overly identify with the labels. Yeah. Hey, Bradley.
Hey, John. Sometimes I listen to like these talks and stuff, kind of like through my clients' perspectives. Kind of playing devil's advocate. And one of your main lessons there was to just treat every human being like it's your own children, right? And I get that, right? Like, because I've learned that, like, being of service and being compassionate actually makes me feel better about myself, right? But I have had clients who kind of share like, oh, I don't really care about anybody, right? I'm kind of indifferent to everyone else, right? So what would be like a good suggestion to kind of have them kind of cultivate compassion, so to speak?
Yeah, so always first and foremost is remember we're working on ourselves. And we have limited capacity to change others, but you work in a therapeutic field where you're helping clients develop a healthier way of living. And so it is helpful to develop some abilities to help maybe enlarge their perspective where it's meaningful, remembering that they may or may not listen or adopt what we're sharing. Having said that, is bringing up how we have opportunities. For example, I know you work in the recovery field, of the disadvantages of being self-centered and not caring about others, and how that has created the conditions for the addiction, the self-centeredness, the inability to have connection, which is often described as the real healing aspect to addiction is connection, right? And so, it's not to teach them that they should care about others, but inquire with them, why wouldn't you care about someone? And, is there in your life times that you've done things that maybe have been harmful and somebody cared about you? And so just having them from their side asking those questions where they might start to recognize that, all of us humans have done some things that haven't been been harmful. I've done lots of harmful things, and people have cared about me. And maybe some reflection on how people that cared about them helped them get the treatment they're getting now. Asking those questions, having them explore without imparting upon them that it would be helpful to care about others, rather inquiring with them maybe some of the limitations to not caring, disadvantages, and what might be helpful if they did. But, questioning from their side. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I appreciate you.
All right, thanks. I had so much bearing going, nah, it sucks. All right. We're a little past time. I do just want to bring up one more sort of interesting point to bear in mind as we move towards agency in our life, is to notice some of the things that really rob us from our opportunities to engage in conscious activities that support who we want to be. And recent article was in the Atlantic, Rose Horowitz, on the era of reading is dead. Like people aren't reading. And we're in a post-literacy era. And what that means isn't that people can't read. It's they're not reading in depth. They're not reading books. They're reading emails. They're reading summaries. They're reading posts. And what's missing is a whole, what we talked about in familiarity, reflection, deepened conscious reflection, analytical capacity. And so more and more that we as humans are caught up in emails and caught up in bullet point summaries and things about that. Post-literacy is nobody's reading the bigger books and texts and reflection, and this is where we transform our lives. And there was a quote in a summary of, we talk about William James a lot. Mom Allen brings him up a lot. But there's a guy named James Williams, who is a Google strategist and now philosopher. And he says the question of the digital age is no longer what do I want? It's who's going to tell me what I want? And so I wanted that to be a cautionary point of as what we are consuming in the digital age, the world that we live in, without conscious reflection and thought and mindfulness, the technology of today is shaping our unconscious mind-body experience. And if we are to have any agency, it is to be very aware of that culture that we're in now and balance it as best we can. And we have to have phones you have to have an app to do almost anything, banking and different things and stuff. And things. So these things can be helpful, but there's a huge detriment that's available as well. And so as the Buddha had left that life as a renunciant to those pleasures, there's a whole lot of pleasure right here that can be robbing you of conscious decision-making processes. And I think that's going to be the big samsara of our time here, is how do we use something like this in a way that can be helpful without it shaping our lives without our conscious agreement. And to be aware of that. So it's kind of nice to turn the thing off from time to time and make sure you get a walk in and read a text, expository text, which is informational text. It's not to be read and then know it. It's you read a paragraph, you paraphrase it, you bring it to mind, you make connections. I used to be a school teacher, so I used to teach how to use informational text. It's not like a book. A novel we can read and I can tell you about it. But the teachings of philosophies and understanding and information, one paragraph, is something to reflect upon, think about, to bring these wisdoms to. So as much as possible, as in the familiarity piece, to really deeply take your time consciously with what it is that you're reading or meditating on or thinking about, and then to maintain a mindfulness of that within the day. That's really applying these three wisdoms and being aware that someone else is trying to tell you what you want, and often they're very successful. Yeah. Should have left on a positive note or what? I don't know. Yeah. Well, I was afraid if I led with that, this whole talk would go into doom and gloom. But the real wonder is, and positive, is that we actually have these teachings with thousands of years of authentication that we get to bring into our lives. And we have the teachings, we have the teachers, we have the conditions. We have the directions. The path is under our feet and the directions are in our hands. And we have the opportunity to, one day at a time, bring them to life. So with that, let's go ahead and dedicate our time and energy, the merit of our time together, and just taking a moment to first recognize a lot of things we could have been doing on a Saturday. And you took the time to reflect upon teachings, thoughts, practices to help you transform your life and to live a life with meaning and purpose, trying to extract some bits of wisdom in any way that you can. You've taken the time to meditate, to reflect, to hear, cultivate a great deal of merit for yourselves and others. And it's nice to recognize your own virtue in this aspect. And then collectively, we've dedicated an incredible amount of merit that has the potential to water the seeds of countless others that we come in contact with. So let us fully dedicate any and all merit and wisdom from this time together for the benefit of all beings. May our collective efforts find their way into the world, nurturing seeds of wisdom and compassion that lead to liberation for all sentient beings, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately recognize our own primordial wisdom. We can awaken so we can be of ultimate benefit to all. All right, well, thank you all so much. I do hope that this has been of some benefit. If there was, put it in your life. If it wasn't, just let it go and move on and find something else that is. His Holiness likes to share that at the end. I like that. Please be well. Take good care of yourselves. Good care of those around you. Thank you, CCR, for all that you do in creating this environment for so many.